There are moments in life when the feeling of being lost arises like a silent echo, questioning us, what's really missing? It's not a void we can fill with objects or achievements, but a restlessness that seems to whisper that external pursuits will never be enough. Perhaps what we're missing is, in fact, something we've left behind within ourselves. Carl Jung, in his relentless exploration of the human psyche, pointed toward paths we often avoid because they seem dark. But these paths hide the very things we need to face. He didn't offer shortcuts or simple answers, but reminded us that confronting our shadows can be the beginning of genuine transformation. Today, let's explore these hidden sides of awakening, not as something to fear, but as truths that, when understood, bring us closer to a more authentic and fulfilling life. Here, what matters is not just what we seek, but the courage to face what we insist on avoiding. What would you do if everything you ever wanted wasn't enough? This question might sound provocative, but for many, it's a reality that's hard to express. Imagine someone who has achieved everything they ever dreamed of: an admirable career, a comfortable home, stable relationships. From the outside, this life seems like the picture of success, and yet, when the applause fades, an inexplicable emptiness remains. This experience isn't uncommon. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, once warned us, "Man is driven by the search for meaning." We can fill our lives with external achievements, but what's essential to feeling whole is never found outside of us. Imagine a chest full of precious jewels, gold, pearls, diamonds. As brilliant as its contents may be, it doesn't hold the key to what truly matters: a genuine sense of purpose for existing. Sometimes we chase goals that aren't even ours. Picture the person who builds a brilliant career, because that's what they've always been told they should do, or someone who follows societal norms simply because they're valued by others. This raises a fundamental question: how many of our goals reflect who we truly are, and how many come from expectations we've absorbed without question? When we don't stop to think about what we're pursuing, we end up filling our lives with achievements that don't nourish us. It's like walking a path laid out by someone else. The steps are ours, but the destination was never chosen by us. This kind of disconnect explains why, even with the everything we idealize, we still feel like something's missing. In everyday life, this shows up as a sense of restlessness, even in moments that should bring happiness. It's as if something is missing, but we can't quite name it. After all, if all our energy is focused on reaching external goals, what happens when we get there? The emptiness we feel isn't about a lack of success, but about a disconnection from what, internally, gives meaning to every step we take. Could focusing only on the bright side of life prevent us from seeing what truly matters? The idea of positive thinking has become a modern mantra, but there are times when it may blind rather than guide us. Imagine a very bright lamp. It lights up the outside but dazzles our eyes, hiding what's around us in the shadows. The effort to avoid discomfort and pain often leads us to neglect essential aspects of our existence. In everyday life, this is evident in people who avoid conflicts to keep the peace. These individuals rarely realize that the accumulation of unresolved feelings, though temporarily silenced, eventually erupts like a volcano, causing even greater harm. When we try to avoid discomfort, we also avoid what could teach us, and sometimes transform us. Not all darkness is an enemy. There are truths about ourselves that only emerge when we dare to look at the sides we've been avoiding. Avoiding pain doesn't make it disappear, it merely hides, waiting for the right moment to remind us it's still there. Shadows, after all, can act like mirrors, reflecting what we already know deep down but haven't yet had the courage to admit. The obsession with positivity creates a paradox. By denying challenges, we distance ourselves from the lessons they bring. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But to find that why, we must face both the light and the dark. When we run from discomfort, we lose the chance to discover a strength that only adversity can reveal. In our daily lives, this can be as simple as listening to what discomfort is trying to tell us. A lingering hurt might signal a boundary that wasn't respected. Anger could indicate a desire for change. Instead of trying to suppress these emotions, perhaps we should ask what they're trying to show us. What if the parts of ourselves we reject are actually our greatest dormant strengths? How often do we find ourselves avoiding or repressing feelings, traits, or memories we don't want to accept as part of who we are? It's as if we lock up a room in the house, believing that will solve the problem. But what we hide doesn't disappear. It only grows stronger in the shadows. Consider someone who constantly blames themselves for failing. With every mistake, they sink deeper into self-criticism, not realizing that guilt is often a mask for something bigger, the fear of trying again and possibly failing once more. This cycle becomes a trap, where fear controls decisions and limits potential. Carl Jung referred to this as the shadow, everything we repress out of shame, fear, or discomfort, but which continues to exist, waiting to be integrated. The irony is that the strength we're looking for often resides in this rejected part. The dark room, once so threatening, when illuminated, reveals itself to be just another part of the house, a space that has always belonged to us. Jung suggested that integrating the shadow isn't about defeating it, but understanding it, and this doesn't happen all at once. Imagine each moment of internal conflict as slowly opening a door. Through each crack, light begins to shine, not to banish the darkness, but to help us see what's been there all along. In the beginning, everything seems confusing and chaotic, but over time, we learn to recognize what's truly there. This process is painful but liberating, not because everything gets resolved, but because we begin to understand ourselves more completely. Often, the shadow also holds repressed qualities. Someone who was always taught to be well-behaved might discover courage and creativity in the parts of themselves they've avoided. When we integrate these qualities, we stop being mere fragments of who we truly are. When we stop avoiding our hidden sides, we can better understand who we really are. What once felt disconnected or undesirable starts to make sense and gradually contributes to a more honest perspective of ourselves. What bothers you most in others? Could it be, deep down, a reflection of something you avoid acknowledging in yourself? This idea may provoke resistance, but projection is a universal human mechanism. When we judge others, we're often diverting attention from parts of ourselves we've yet to accept. Imagine a coworker you consider too competitive. Your discomfort with their attitude grows. But does it perhaps mirror your own ambition? Suppressed by fear of being judged, or that friend who always exaggerates their opinions, could they echo your unspoken desire to freely express yourself, stifled by insecurity? It's like looking into a cracked mirror. The reflection is distorted, but carries truths we cannot ignore. Projections are not just defense mechanisms. They're opportunities for self-discovery. Facing them takes courage, because it forces us to admit what lies beyond appearances, parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. However, by examining these distortions, we gain clearer insight into our motivations and vulnerabilities. This process doesn't provide immediate comfort, but allows us to move beyond simplistic views and dive into the complexity of who we are. When we look at what the mirror reflects back, we realize that the initial discomfort is less about others and more about what we've avoided exploring within ourselves. It's not about striving for perfection, but about building a more honest relationship with who we are, and, as a result, with the world around us. Those who try to save the world are often the ones most in need of help themselves. This is a difficult truth to accept, especially for those who take on the responsibility of caring for everyone around them. It's as though their own pain is forgotten, buried under the weight of solving others' problems. But what truly motivates this behavior? Is it altruism, or an attempt to fill something missing inside? Think of someone who's always ready to resolve family conflicts, mediate friends' difficulties, or take on extra tasks at work to spare their colleagues. From a distance, this person seems strong, seems selfless, even heroic. Yet behind this facade often lies profound exhaustion and an unacknowledged need to be seen, supported, or even to find meaning in their own suffering. Joseph Campbell, in his studies on myths, speaks of the reluctant hero, the one who, before saving the world, must confront their own internal challenges. It's a narrative that resonates with all of us because we cannot offer others something we haven't yet learned to give ourselves. It's like a bird trying to free another from a trap while its own wings remain bound. Taking on the role of savior may seem noble, but it's often a way of escaping our own pain. Acknowledging this isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of humanity. Caring for others is important, but it should never come at the expense of neglecting who we are. After all, the most generous act we can offer the world is the commitment to understand ourselves first. What if coincidences weren't mere accidents, but echoes of what we already know, even unconsciously? Have you ever experienced a moment when something improbable happened? Like running into someone who was on your mind or stumbling upon an answer in an unexpected place? Often, we call this luck or fate. But Jung had another interpretation: synchronicity, a meaningful connection between seemingly unrelated events. Imagine being in a dilemma about a relationship that feels like it's ending. At that very moment, you come across an old photograph from a time when everything made sense, or you hear a song that revives buried memories. These encounters, though they seem coincidental, have the power to surface deep reflections already within us, waiting to emerge. Synchronicity isn't a magical message from the universe, but an invitation to pay attention to the connections between what we experience and what we feel. It's like a stream joining others along its path. While we might not know where it ends, we can notice how each twist and convergence adds something to its course. These moments call for a slower, more attentive perspective. Recognizing synchronicities isn't about seeking external answers, but listening to the echoes of what's already stirring within us. After all, the coincidences that leave a mark on us aren't just about what happens externally. They're about how we connect to them internally. Synchronicities also teach us about our intuition. They're not merely curious events, but reminders that we're more connected to our inner selves than we often realize. When something happens at the right moment, it's an opportunity to listen to that inner voice we so often ignore. For instance, when we're faced with a difficult decision and come across something that seems to point the way, a book, a conversation, a memory, it might not be the universe speaking, but our intuition seeking to be heard. This inner dialogue, often subtle, has the potential to guide us in ways we're only beginning to understand. Why are the hardest days often the ones that teach us the most? In the journey of any significant change, there are moments when everything seems to stall or even regress. It's easy to feel like we've failed when progress isn't immediately visible, but the truth is, growth rarely follows a straight line. Imagine someone who starts meditating to reduce anxiety. In the first few days, the practice feels simple, but over time, discomforts begin to surface. Hidden beneath the calm, frustrated, the person gives up, convinced it's not working. Years later, when faced with a challenging situation, they notice themselves reacting with surprising calm and clarity. Unaware that the abandoned habit had already planted seeds of change, this dynamic can be likened to a tree in winter. Its leaves fall and its branches appear barren, but beneath the surface, the roots continue to grow, preparing for spring. In moments of apparent setback, it's crucial to remember that learning isn't always visible. It's during these times that we develop resilience, patience, and a deeper understanding of ourselves. Real progress isn't measured solely by visible results, but by how we face challenges. It's in the pauses when everything seems stagnant that the most meaningful transformations take place, in a world that prizes constant progress. Taking a pause is almost an act of resistance, but pausing isn't the same as failing. It's in these pauses that we process what we've experienced and prepare for what's ahead. Think of soil resting between harvests. At first glance, it might seem unproductive, but during this interval, it regains its strength. We, too, need these moments to reflect on our experiences. We're not moving backward. We're building strength for the steps to come. What if what we see as the end is actually the beginning of something new? In moments of exhaustion, when everything feels meaningless, it's common to believe there's no way forward. Yet, it's often at these points that possibilities we never imagined begin to emerge. Albert Camus wrote about the myth of Sisyphus, the man condemned to push a boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down repeatedly. For Camus, the meaning wasn't in reaching a final destination, but in the act of persistence itself. This constant effort transforms the absurdity of the situation into an affirmation of life. Imagine someone facing an unexpected job loss. In the moment, it feels like the end of a carefully built path, but as they explore new opportunities, they discover a direction more aligned with their true aspirations. The road that seemed to end revealed a fork they hadn't seen before, just like a trail that vanishes into the horizon. The next step isn't always clear, but it's in the walking, the continuous movement, that we find what we didn't know we were looking for. The end isn't a destination, but a turning point, a pause that challenges us to see from a new perspective and rediscover what it means to move forward. Are we treating awakening as just another commodity? It's easy to get lost in this pursuit. Today, the idea of personal growth circulates like a valuable currency, but often, what is presented as self-awareness is merely another race to achieve visible results, becoming more productive, earning more money, gaining more recognition. But does this more truly take us where we want to go? Think of the alluring promises of programs that guarantee spiritual prosperity for a hefty price. They offer a shining future, but often leave us further from ourselves. It's like a golden ladder, dazzling at first glance but leading nowhere. Meanwhile, the work that truly matters, the kind that invites us to look inward and face what we avoid, remains overlooked. We live in a world that teaches us to measure the value of everything: the number of achievements, the size of the bank account, the invisible trophies of others' approval. But in trying to weigh the wind or capture light in a bottle, we forget that the most transformative things in life cannot be calculated. They happen when we allow ourselves to be present, when we let go of the urge to accumulate and simply feel what it means to be human. This reflection requires courage to question what is sold to us, to stop searching outside for what can only be found within. True growth isn't about having more. It's about recognizing what we already have, and more importantly, who we are. Maybe what we need isn't to acquire, but to acknowledge. Maybe true wealth lies in everything that cannot be bought. The real richness of awakening isn't in the achievements we display, but in the truths we learn to accept. We live in a world that celebrates absolute certainty, but there's a unique beauty in admitting we're still learning. After all, awakening isn't a destination, but a continuous journey of discovery. Great teachers, like the Dalai Lama, often remind us that wisdom isn't something we possess fully. On the contrary, they teach us that each day offers an opportunity to look at the world with curiosity and reverence. As if for the first time, it's this attitude of constant learning that makes the journey richer and more meaningful. Imagine a starry sky. No matter how many times we gaze at it, there will always be stars we haven't seen, and constellations we don't yet understand. Acknowledging this doesn't diminish us. On the contrary, it connects us to the vastness around us and to the humility that brings us closer to one another. In the end, the beauty of awakening lies in embracing our humanity with all its contradictions. It's not about accumulating answers, but about welcoming the questions, about understanding that we don't need to know everything to live fully, and that with every moment of acceptance, we find a little more peace. The greatest discoveries we make aren't in the answers we seek, but in the questions we dare to ask ourselves. It's in the willingness to look inward, with all its contradictions, doubts, and possibilities, that we find something more meaningful than any external achievement. This isn't a path measured by speed or results, but by how willing we are to recognize and accept who we are. Awakening isn't a ladder to the top, but a process of peeling back the layers that separate us from our essence. It invites us to see our wholeness, light and shadow, successes and mistakes, strengths and vulnerabilities. And it's in this encounter that we discover what truly drives us. May we walk without haste, learn with openness, and live with authenticity, because in the end, every step we take, whether steady or hesitant, is in itself a part of what makes us whole.